In today's video, we're going to share the true story behind the birth of the Lexus brand, which is directly related to forced agreements between the governments of the United States and Japan. And how does the Japanese Lexus connect to America? Well, without Lexus there would have been no Infiniti or Acura either, and we can thank the 40th President of the United States, Ronald Reagan, for that. Of course, it's a joke, but as you know, every joke contains a grain of truth. The rest of this story, however, is quite serious. By the beginning of the 1970s, the market share of imported cars in the United States was only around 11%, which was acceptable to American car manufacturers. However, by 1980, it had skyrocketed to almost 30%, with a significant portion of that being accounted for by fuel-efficient Japanese cars that flooded the U.S. market after the 1973 fuel crisis. The representatives of the Detroit Big Three, along with the American Motors Corporation, were unable to withstand the Japanese pressure. The American auto industry began to sink rapidly and was on the brink of bankruptcy in the early 1980s. Detroit pleaded with the government to intervene and impose strict restrictions on the import of Japanese cars. When Ronald Reagan took office as president, the pleas of the American carmakers were finally heard. In March 1981, less than 2 months after Reagan's inauguration, his administration began negotiations with the Japanese Ministry of International Trade and Industry regarding the possibility of implementing a voluntary export restraint on Japanese cars to the USA. As an alternative, the Americans proposed imposing high customs duties and even economic sanctions. The Japanese, of course, chose the lesser of two evils and agreed to the voluntary export restraint. However, they managed to outmaneuver the Americans on their own turf. The so-called Voluntary Export Restraint Agreement, which came into effect in mid-1981, stipulated that only a certain number of cars, 1,685,000 units, were allowed to be sold in the USA annually, but there were no restrictions on the type of cars or their prices. Japanese automakers represented by Honda, Toyota, and Nissan initially resisted the government's decisions, which were practically taken under the pressure of America. However, they soon realized that this agreement was not a reason to worry at all. In fact, it could be a unique opportunity for an even deeper penetration into the American market, which was considered crucial for the entire Japanese automotive industry at that time. In the 1970s and early 1980s, the Japanese primarily exported relatively affordable family four-cylinder cars to the USA. For example, small cars like the Toyota Corolla or slightly larger ones like the Cressida, known as the Corona in Japan and considered midsize there, were only classified as compact class according to American standards. They competed with models like the AMC Hornet, Ford Maverick, and similar ones. Even the Toyota Crown, despite being considered a large and luxurious car in its home country and notably high quality and well equipped, did not fall under the American definition of midsize. Its demand in the USA was extremely low, with annual sales numbering only in the hundreds of units. American buyers simply did not associate a car they perceived as small with the luxury class, although many of them had already accepted the fact that even compact Japanese cars were superior in terms of equipment quality and fuel efficiency compared to domestic models. The Voluntary Export Restraints Agreement has actually pushed Toyota and other Japanese companies to make one of the most important decisions in their history. If the quantity of cars for sale in the USA is strictly limited, then the focus should be on producing even higher quality, more luxurious, and expensive cars with greater trade markups and overall profitability. So, they decided to start manufacturing and selling such large and luxurious vehicles in the USA. Before embarking on the development of these new cars, the Japanese started testing the American luxury market by introducing their existing compact models, fully equipped to the maximum. Toyota, for instance, offered the updated fourth-generation sedan Corona Mark II in the top-of-the-line configuration, again marketed as Cressida. Nissan launched the American sales of the top version of the 810 Maxima sedan, and Honda joined the game with the Accord Special Edition model featuring a luxurious interior and additional amenities. The experiment was successful, as the Japanese realized that the American audience was more than willing to pay extra for high-quality, fully equipped compact Japanese cars. For Japanese car manufacturers, it was time to move forward and start implementing ambitious and far-reaching plans to penetrate the American market with large luxury automobiles. In August 1983, During a closed-door, as Toyota referred to it, a secret meeting of the company's top executives, in the presence of chairman of the board Eiji Toyoda and president of the American division Yukiyasu Togo, a significant decision was made. Toyota Motor Corporation decided to enter the American luxury car market, specifically targeting the high-end price segment, which was primarily dominated by just three companies at that time: Cadillac, BMW, and Mercedes. Notably, Cadillac, which had held a dominant position in this segment for over 2 decades, was starting to lose ground rapidly under the pressure of German competitors. These German luxury cars had become a symbol of status among wealthy American yuppies, and surprisingly, their popularity was booming despite their incredibly high prices. At the beginning of the 1980s, the price of the cheapest 5 Series BMW in the USA was around $25,000, and similarly sized Mercedes models with 6-cylinder engines were selling for over $30,000. The cost of 8-cylinder Mercedes models even exceeded $40,000. In contrast, the same Cadillac Seville was priced below $20,000, and the DeVille Coupe was around $13,000. Around the same time, the most expensive Toyota Cressida in a 4-door body also cost roughly the same as the Cadillac. On the local Japanese market, Toyota's flagship model has long been the Century, which was never officially sold in other countries. With a length of over 5 meters, it was comparable in size and features to the higher-end models of Mercedes and BMW, boasting an 8-cylinder engine. However, in essence, the fundamental design and structure of the Century remained unchanged since its debut in 1967. The Century was considered too old-fashioned and conservative to be relied upon for any major breakthroughs. To capture the American luxury market, Toyota needed something entirely new and revolutionary. This led to the birth of Project F1, with the letter F in its name standing for flagship. Toyota approached this project with unprecedented scale, involving over 3,500 engineers, technicians, and designers, divided into 24 separate teams. Their task was to create an entirely fresh car with a brand new architecture and engine. Moreover, this car had to surpass all German competitors, particularly the Mercedes W126 S-Class sedan in all aspects. One of the most challenging problems faced by the Japanese engineers was the development of a new engine for F1. According to the standards of luxury vehicles, it had to be a powerful V8 engine, but at the same time, it had to meet and preferably exceed federal regulations and requirements for fuel efficiency and emissions. Toyota invested a tremendous amount of money, around $400 million, in developing just this engine, but it turned out to be a highly profitable investment in the end. In July 1985, the first operational prototype of the F1 project was assembled. Interestingly, according to the official version, the fundamental design of the first prototype was developed based on a secret study of the preferences of potential American buyers. This study was conducted by a special group of Japanese engineers and designers who were sent to the USA to observe the lifestyle and characteristics of affluent Americans. This group traveled to California in May 1985, and the prototype appeared in July. As for how they managed to quickly immerse themselves in the luxurious American way of life and create a design for the new car in such a short time, we can only speculate. Nevertheless, it took the Japanese another 2 years to refine the original conceptual design into its final production form. The secret group of Japanese spies sent to the USA also discovered another very interesting and unexpected fact. Wealthy Americans who preferred cars from the Mercedes and BMW segments would never switch to a Toyota, no matter how impressive it might be, simply because Toyota in the USA was not considered a premium brand. In other words, to succeed in the American luxury market, the new Toyota couldn't be called Toyota. This contradiction puzzled the higher-ups at Toyota for quite some time. Only the rapid success of the new premium brand Acura, introduced by Honda to the U.S. market in March 1986, compelled Toyota's management, including Chairman Eiji Toyoda, to swallow their pride and in May of the same year, authorize the development of a completely new brand. The agency Lippincott and Margulies, now known simply as Lippincott, was hired specifically to come up with a name for a new brand. They presented a whopping 219 different options, and among the most promising were Chaparral, Caliber, Vector, Verone, and Alexis, which eventually became the favorite. However, at some point, it underwent a transformation and became Lexus. Now, There are a few theories as to why this change happened. One theory suggests that at the time, the name Alexis was heavily associated with a character named Alexis Carrington Colby from the popular soap opera Dynasty. Apparently, Alexis was portrayed as a cunning and ruthless supervillainess. Toyota didn't want to name their new brand after a character with such negative connotations, so Alexis became Lexus. However, even Lexus wasn't quite right as it was supposedly difficult to pronounce. That's when they decided to replace the I with a U, giving us the catchy and easy-to-say name Lexus that we all love today. Another theory is that they couldn't use the name Lexus because there was already a company registered as Lexus Nexus in the USA, and they wanted something unique. Finally, there's a least likely theory that suggests Lexus stands for Luxury Export to the United States. Anyway, by the beginning of 1988, the final name for the new brand had been approved. The official logo also took quite some time to develop, and in the end, a certain strict mathematical formula was supposedly used to create the final version with the letter L inside an oval. As for the name of the newest model, it seems they didn't think about it for too long. The name LS400 encrypted the phrase luxury sedan and hinted at the 4-liter engine capacity. In that same year, 1988, the first Lexus advertising slogan was born: the relentless pursuit of perfection. And it must be said that it perfectly reflected the process of creating the model. Over several years since the first prototype appeared, they built a total of about 900 test engines and 450 test cars, often disguised as Cressida, which underwent intensive testing on European, American, and Canadian roads to perfect every aspect. Just the sound insulation and premium Nakamichi audio system took engineers about a year to develop, and when it came to the final suspension tuning, none other than the famous American racing driver, tuner and entrepreneur Roger Penske lent a helping hand to the Japanese engineers. According to some sources, the total distance covered by Lexus prototypes during testing reached 2.7 million kilometers, and the total amount Toyota spent on the project's development reached $1 billion. In late 1988, Lexus conducted a preliminary presentation of its new brand, and by January '89, the LS400 made its debut and was available for sale later that same year. It's worth mentioning that alongside the grand premiere of the flagship sedan, there was also the introduction of the younger model, Lexus ES250, which was a revamped version of the Japanese Camry Prominent. This model aimed to compete with the Acura Legend, which, at that time, was the most expensive Japanese car in the US market, priced at around $20,000. On the other hand, the Lexus LS400, with its 5-meter length and 1.82-meter width, had its sights set directly on the flagship German sedans, the BMW 7 Series E32, and the Mercedes S-Class W126. The advertised base price for the sedan was $35,000, but that was just a marketing tactic. Initially, all cars available at dealerships came fully loaded with features such as leather interiors, sunroofs, the renowned Nakamichi high-end audio system, and many others, supposedly listed as options. As a result, the LS400 with its only available V8 engine producing 250 horsepower couldn't be purchased for less than $40,000. Nonetheless, it was still nearly $10,000 less expensive than the BMW 735 with a less powerful engine and $20,000 less than the Mercedes 420 SEL. The 8-cylinder Cadillac Seville was completely out of the picture. Despite having significantly less power and noticeably lower build quality, they cost almost as much as the LS400. The Japanese truly managed to create a superior luxury car that not only matched the German competitors in comfort, features, and driving performance but also outdid them in terms of value for the price. In fact, some started accusing Toyota of selling the LS400 below its production cost, although there was no evidence to support this claim. There was also some criticism about the LS400's body design, as despite its stately appearance, it resembled a smoother-edged version of the Mercedes. However, critics seem to overlook the fact that these refined contours contributed to the LS400 having one of the best drag coefficients, not just within its class but among contemporary cars overall, with a coefficient of 0.29. In comparison, the Mercedes W126 had coefficients of 0.36 for the 4-door body and 0.34 for the 2-door body. Anyway, overall, Lexus became quite popular among American buyers in the upper price range of the luxury class. Starting with 70 dealerships in January 1989, Lexus had expanded to 150 showrooms across America within a year. This success was largely due to the more premium customer service offered by Lexus dealerships compared to their German counterparts, who often treated customers arrogantly and rudely. In 1990, Lexus managed to sell nearly 64,000 of its cars in the American market, with the majority being LS400 models. Mercedes sold around 11,000 more cars during the same period, but the number of BMWs sold was almost equal to that of Lexus. In 1991, Lexus sales surpassed 71,000 units, and many buyers openly admitted switching from German rivals to Japanese cars. As a result, Mercedes sales fell by 25%, and BMWs by 16%. Lexus had successfully invaded the US market, and from there the expansion continued. However, in Europe, the newly formed Japanese company, which entered the market in 1990, didn't fare as well as in the USA. Part of the reason was the high price. For instance, in the UK, the LS400 was priced at £32,000, which was almost identical to the price of a BMW 735. Additionally, European luxury car buyers were more conservative compared to Americans. Many of them viewed Lexus as mere rebranded Toyotas, lacking enough prestige to compete fully with German brands. Even on the domestic Japanese market, Toyota saw no need to launch a new brand, so the new LS400 was sold as the Toyota Celsior in its home country, and Lexus only arrived in Japan in 2005. In 1990, during its first full year of sales, Lexus held less than a 0.5% market share in the US, but over the following years, it notably grew, crossing the 2% mark for the first time in 2007. By the end of 2020, the company had sold 719,000 vehicles worldwide, with 275,000 sold in the USA, accounting for 1.89% of all car sales in the country. For comparison, BMW held a 1.91% share in the US market in 2020, while Mercedes performed slightly better at 2.24% or 316,000 cars sold. Cadillac sold only 129,000 cars in the USA in 2020, with a market share of less than 1%. Thank you for watching and see you in our next video.